Hello and welcome to today's lesson on completing the square in order to solve a quadratic equation. So let's just have a quick review of the skill of completing the square. So remember, what we're going to do is take our quadratic expression here and then fill in our grid so that we've shared this amount of x, which is 6x, equally between the top right hand and the bottom left hand parts of our grid, because we're trying to create one linear expression multiplied by the same linear expression so that we've got a square. So here I'm going to take x squared, and here, because this is 6x, I'm going to have 3x in each of these two parts of my grid. So what I'd like you to do now that I've reminded you of that part, could you pause the video and see if you can express this quadratic in completed square form? Okay, so you should have had x and x, and then because we're multiplying here to get 3x, we're going to need a positive 3 here, and then the same again on the left-hand side. So this grid here I'm using to work out x add 3 squared, because I've got x add 3 multiplied by x add 3. So if I fill in the rest of my grid here, I'm going to have positive 3 times positive 3, which will be positive 9. My expression, though, doesn't have positive 9, it has positive 5. So I now need to think about what I'm going to need to add or subtract to make sure that in total I've only got what I need, which is positive 5. So to make positive 5, then I'm going to need to subtract 4. So in this box right here, I'm going to have negative 4. So that means this expression is identical to x plus 3 all squared, because that will give me the x squared and the 6x in total that I need, and then subtract 4 so that I end up with a total constant of 5 rather than the 9 that I would get if I left it as x add 3 squared. Okay, so that's the skill that we were practicing last lesson. Now we're going to use this form to solve our quadratic. So far we've looked at factorising to solve. And this is another technique we can use, and sometimes we can use it when we can't factorise. So this means that I'm going to need an equation. So what we've done so far, this here is an expression. There is no equation to solve here. I would have to have this equal to something in order to have an equation to solve. So I've written this expression now as an equation equal to 0. And I know that this expression I can rewrite in completed square form. I know that it is equal to x add 3 squared subtract 4. So I'm writing that as x add 3 squared subtract 4 equal to 0. So all I've done is replace this quadratic with its completed square form. And now what I'm going to do is add 4 to both sides. So if I add 4 to both sides, I'm going to get x plus 3 squared is equal to 4. So I've added 4, which will mean that I no longer have the subtract 4, and on this side I've added 4, so I'm going to get positive 4. So next I'm going to square root. So the thing to remember is when I square root a number, I will actually get 2 answers. If I square root 4, I'll get 2, because 2 times 2 is equal to 4. But there is always a negative solution as well. So I can also say that if I square root 4, I could have negative 2, because negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. So I will always get x plus 3 is equal to the positive square root, and x add 3 is equal to the negative square root. So always these two versions. Next, what I'm going to do then is work out what x is by subtracting 3 from both sides from this equation, and also subtracting 3 from both sides from this equation. So if I subtract 3 from this one, I'll get x on this side, and 2 subtract 3 is negative 1. If I subtract 3 from both sides from this equation, I'll get x, and then negative 2 subtract 3 will give me negative 5. So I will get most of the time two solutions exactly like I do when I factorise my quadratic to solve. So we are almost always expecting two solutions when we solve a quadratic. So just a reminder of what those solutions actually are. Here is the graph of y equals x squared add 6x add 5, just the one we were just solving. And the two solutions that we got for x were -1 and -5. And so those solutions over here and over here are where the graph crosses the x-axis. And that is, of course, where y is equal to 0. The y coordinate of these points is 0. So our y here is replaced with a 0. And remember that these points are called the roots. So what we've done again here is find the roots of this quadratic. Okay, we're going to have another example here. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to pause the video and give this a go yourself first of all. It's really important that you do that before I run through it. So first of all, you are completing the square. And then you're going to make your quadratic expression here equal to 0 and use your completed square form to solve and find the roots. So pause the video and give it a go. Okay, so completing the square first of all, you should have x squared, and then your 10x here is going to be shared between these two squares in your grid. So you're going to have 5x and 5x. So filling in the top and the left-hand side then, I'm going to have x, and then I must have +5 and +5. Now that's going to give me, when I multiply these two together, +5 times +5, it's going to give me here +25. And I don't want +25, I want +2. So I want these to make a total of 2, which means that in the green part of my grid here, I must have -23. So I can rewrite this quadratic expression in completed square form, and it is going to be x add 5 all squared, and then subtract 23. So now using this to solve the quadratic equation, x squared add 10x add 2 equals 0, I'm going to replace my quadratic here with its completed square form. And now I'm going to solve this. So I'm going to add 23 to both sides. And that will give me x add 5 squared is equal to 23. Now, the next stage, if I try to square root, 23 is not a square number, so this is not going to give me a nice number. Now, if you did this all the way through, you might have done it and got yourself a decimal, which is fine. But so that we don't get such a messy answer, so that we get a nice, neat and tidy answer, I'm going to leave this in surd form. So I'm going to square root, and I'm going to get a positive answer. X add 5 equals the square root of 23, and then I'm going to get the negative version. So x add 5 equals negative root 23. And I'm just going to leave it in surd form. And now for both of these answers, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides so that I get an answer for x. And I'm just going to leave that in exact form. So I'm going to write it like this. Instead of doing root 23 subtract 5, we don't like to do that because it tends to look sometimes like your -5 then is under the root. So we're going to put it first, and we're going to do the same to this other one. We're going to write it as x equals -5 subtract root 23. Okay, so your task for today is the one that you can see on the screen here. You're going to complete the square, and then you're going to use that completed square form to solve your equation equal to 0, but you're going to leave your answers in surd form. So you're not going to work them out as a decimal answer. And what you can see here, it's combined the two answers together to leave it as something add root something and something subtract root something. You can write it as one answer like this with the plus and the minus, or you can write it as two separate answers. It doesn't really matter. So these over here are just more difficult to complete the square. Okay, so pause the video and see how you get on with these.